He certainly knows the evils of the shadow government in the manifested in the organization known as FEMA and Homeland Security. I don't know if he's on the line, but I'm going to introduce him as if he is. A man of great knowledge and especially with commercial procedures. A friend of mine, I'm proud to call all of these men my friends, prouder than you folks can imagine if you understood the risks that these people take, the knowledge that any day their lives could be snuffed out. All of us now, for the first time, probably feeling fear of that because we don't want this process to be killed. That's why we're sharing it now. First time I've ever felt any fear about it, because I want to see the end to the travesty that has befallen this world. And my next guest I'm proud to welcome is James Timothy Turner. Tim Turner. Tim, welcome to the program if you're there. No Tim. Well, hopefully Tim will call in. But most of you know Tim, so you can imagine what he would say. Well, I'd like to begin, if I may, first of all, by welcoming Regan and Tom to the program, and Tim when he joins us. And I'd like to, Regan, with apologies to you, I'd like to start with Tom's perspective. Tom, I'm going to give you the floor because I know you're going to give us both barrels. If you would just give us your perspective on the process, the worldly perspective on this process that we are undertaking and the bigger story.
Well, thank you, Sam, and I appreciate that. 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 Well, thank you, Sam.
All right, we're back on the air. We're having, let me just say, Tom, let me interrupt you for 1 second. We owe a great debt of thanks to John and the Republic Broadcasting Network for allowing us to go commercial-free tonight. So naturally, our computers that coordinate the commercial messages are going to be a little screwed up. I apologize for any technical difficulties. It is really an honor to be honored by the Republic Broadcasting Network this way on the Internet, on Shoutcast, and throughout all of the FM radio stations and satellite feeds that Republic is carrying. Anyway, Tom, I return the floor to you with apologies.
Yes, like I say, more in the form of a message of gratitude for all the people we work with. And like you just mentioned, RBM, thank them for foregoing commercial announcements tonight on our behalf and giving us as much time as possible. I really appreciate it. You're often noted for saying this is for entertainment purposes only, and in reality this is not. So this is not entertainment. This is for the specific purpose in my mind of demonstrating our God-given inalienable rights to speak up when we see wrongs being done and to do what we can to fix it. It's our responsibility to the Lord. He told us we could tell mountains to get up and move, and they would, and it's our fault if we don't. I also am very, very confident in the people in the United States military, our fathers, our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our kids. I know that there's been great mishaps in the past. It comes to mind Kent State back in the 70s when the generation that wanted to end the war in Vietnam because they knew this was a go-nowhere situation that we didn't need to be involved in, and it was also based on the same kind of deceptive practices we got going on now. And I think it was 4 kids at Kent State died in a peaceful protest in a college university where all they were doing was expressing their opinions. And I think if people think about that from a historical perspective, they'll understand that although the war in Vietnam didn't end for a couple more years, that was probably the marker and monument to peace that created the peace in Vietnam and the United States leaving. Because no matter what the politicians tried to do to resurrect the need to be there, it was overwhelmed by the American people's understanding that they lost 4 of their children for trying to convey what they believed were their moral convictions peacefully in a college university campus where free ideas are supposed to be nourished and cherished, and the intellect of men admired for the peaceful conversation leading to results. And I don't credit anything more than the Kent State situation to ending the war in Vietnam than I can imagine in history. It was not good men. It was not Richard Nixon. It was not the politicians to be who go along with the status quo, who stopped that, but the American people. The generation gap that they talked about back then, our fathers and grandfathers who were so proud to be Americans for the position we played in World War I and World War II and trying to liberate people that were going to be subjugated, was a pride issue that was justifiable, in spite of the fact that behind the scenes were those dark forces manipulating the world with their banking structures, trying to enslave the world. And yet, the men and women who lived and died on behalf of the rest of the world know what it means to put their life on the line every day. And I have complete confidence in those guys. I know we may have a few rogue people out there in the world who, just like anybody in a society this large is going to have some insanity cases. But in reality, I have complete confidence in our people. From another historical standpoint, I recognize that in China, when Tiananmen Square was happening, the premier of China called in 8 Chinese generals to come in and eliminate their own people, and 8 said no. Well, they were all discharged, demoted, and they finally found a general who would. And I think he came in and killed almost 250,000 of his own people. But I don't think that could ever happen in America. We're too close to our family members in the military, and they're too close to us. And they recognize as well as we do that we're in a country in a mess. It's probably no bigger embarrassment to us or any of the men in the military to know that Interpol is in this country with a blanket immunity to clean up the mess in our house. What an embarrassment. That would be like calling the nanny in from that show on TV to help straighten out your children in your house. Pretty sad day of affairs when executive orders give blanket immunity to an international police organization to come and clean up our financial mess. It's also a sad day when the president puts out an executive order. I think it was done on November 17th, and it was Order 13519, superseding Order 13271 of 2002. And it was a financial crimes sweep or orders to go out here and correct the financial crimes that hadn't been corrected since 2002. So 8 years after the fact, we're still trying to do what was supposed to have been done in 2002. And we have those victims, or we have those showpieces like Mr. Madoff caught with $50 billion worth of theft and deception, and yet he is not even one of the major players. I compare him to the guy in the corner selling marijuana. He's not the big fish. He's just a puppet that we caught. If we want to look at worldwide economic terrorism, we know where it begins and we know where it's at. It's amazing that we'll publish it in the papers and tell you when G7 meets and G20 meets, and the arrogance and egotisticalness of these psychopaths who actually think they have the authority to control the world and enslave the people of the world for their benefit. It's amazing to me that we live in a world of such appalling, I don't want to say ignorance, but ignorance is part of it. Ignorance is what they have instituted, and we've seen examples of that throughout history. When they conquered and they subdued the American natives, one of the first things they had to do was destroy their culture and re-educate. Re-educate is to dumb down. Forget what you knew and let us implant the ideology that we want you to have. How do you justify genocide in any other way except wait until the next generation grows up? Doesn't it remind us of what Hitler did with the Hitler Youth? These things I look at these things as the playbook of revolution and the playbook used by dictators and despots throughout world history. And there's